I feel like my layouts all follow the same design, even though I try to make them different. I wish I created pages that always looked fresh and exciting. Is there some special trick I can remember? Glitter Girl, can you help?
Of course I can. And happy National Scrapbooking Day to you. Or you might be watching this some other day, and happy that day to you. But for now, it's National Scrapbooking Day. And today I'm going to start with an old layout. So specifically, I want you to choose a layout of yours to go along with this type of conundrum. And I don't want it to be one of the most recent pages that you made. You need to go back a little bit. Take something from the archives and choose a page that's a little bit older, but that you still really, really like. And when I think back of lots of different pages, I have lots of favorites, but this is one that I always come back to. It has a very different look to some of my other pages, and it's one that just still makes me really happy. It has a lot of product that's older, of course, because I made it a long time ago, and some of this product wasn't really new at the time that I used it. But I really enjoy, and I really enjoyed making it. I remember making it and enjoying that process, and I still like it when I look at it. So this is where I'm going to start, and I really, really suggest if you're in this sort of predicament that you do the same thing. You go back to a layout that's not exactly your style right now. It's not completely removed. You still made it and you still love it. But it's not exactly what you've been making for, say, the last couple months. And put it on your desk. We're not going to take it apart. We're just going to use it as inspiration. And if that makes you go through your albums and have a look at different things, then that's great too, because that's always good for developing your style and realizing what you love and what you don't. But in this case, it's where I'm going to start. And then we're going to change 3 things to create a page that's really inspired by this, but that won't look like this. So that the 2 pages in my album will be very different. Now, I'm not using a photo that's right next to this in the story, so these 2 pages are going to be in different albums. So honestly, I could make it look pretty much like this and I wouldn't be hugely worried about it. But I personally find it a little bit more artistically, creatively fulfilling if I can make it look different while not making me bang my head against the wall trying to reinvent the wheel, reinvent the scrapbook page. So I'm going to use this page and I'm going to change 3 things in order to make a new page. So I'm going to set this one aside, and one of the things I'm going to stick with the same is the photo. So I've started with one photo that's 4x4. This one looks like it's, that photo must have been just smaller than 4x4 because this one is 4x4, but pretty much the same. And it's a square. And I'm using a frame around the edge. This one was black, but this one is white, but still same sort of idea. And the first thing I'm going to choose to change is color. So here I have a color scheme of brown with fuchsia and green and a little bit of turquoise. And today I'm going to be using the colors that will be on all of the pages from the 3rd birthday party, which is red and black with then little shots of other colors because the party was red, black, and white. Now, I need to start with what's here. Now, this is something I don't do all the time anymore, and that's to use a sheet of cardstock for my background. I immediately thought, well, I need black cardstock, and guess what? Because I don't use a lot of cardstock anymore, I don't have a whole sheet of black cardstock. So I looked at some other options. I've got either a red or a gray, and I pulled them both out. And I had 2 things that I wanted to consider. One, I'd already chosen this red paper amongst a few other reds. And the reason is that when I've done one page for his birthday already, and I had pulled out a bunch of different supplies, so that I basically am working from a kit of my own creation that will do a few layouts so that I can get most of the birthday photos done with what I've already pulled out, right? So I already had that red, but I didn't have the solid cardstock because it's not something that I tend to pick up right now. And here's one thing that's a bit of a problem. I don't have any red cardstock that's a great mix to the red patterns that I've chosen. The black and white doesn't matter. The red in this and the red in this are not exactly the same, but now I have a 3rd red. Does it really hugely knock it out? No. It doesn't make it completely an type no for me, but it is something that catches my eye that now I've got 3 different reds. Do I want to go to that many reds knowing that I might then put red stickers, red embellishments, red whatever else on top? Is it going to be too many shades of red and cause a problem? So I have that, which obviously I don't get with the gray. The gray is not a problem. It's neutral, and I don't have it appearing anywhere else, so it's going to be fine. But here's the other thing, and this was a bigger deal to me, is when I look at this page, the thing I like about the cardstock frame around the edge is the texture. It has less to do with the color than the texture. Now, the color here is a good match because I then picked up on that color in the embellishment. But the thing that makes me look at it and go, oh, actually, in that case, I like the solid cardstock, is because it's not just solid. It has a texture. This red does not have a texture. It's smooth, and the gray does have a texture. So that's where I'm going to make that decision. Out goes the red, and the gray is going to be my 12 by 12 background. So number one thing was that I was going to change my color scheme. And I'm not up to the number 2 thing yet. I'm still working on that same color scheme. And I'm going to go ahead and choose my background, and the background that's going to go on top of that, and that's this. It's very similar to what I have here if I look at the fact that I've changed the color. It's still a crosshatch or a plaid design, which is what we've got here. It's just going to be a little different in style. This one is more rigid with something like it looks like it's been drawn with a pen, where this one looks like it's been drawn with a marker that's on its way out. And this one is a horizontal and vertical plaid, where this one is on the diagonal. But the 2 types of papers are very similar. The plaid or the check is a very similar size, so it's going to read very much the same. So this is going to become that background pattern paper that is fuchsia here. So this black and white print is from Create Paper's Valentine collection. Most recent Valentine collection. There we go. Okay. Now, second thing I'm going to change. I've changed color. I'm also going to change direction. And here, that could mean one of 2 things. If you have a look at this page, the photo is facing this way. So everything is designed around the photo being on this side, and the words are over toward the left of the photo. So I could change direction by doing just moving this over to the left and moving the wording over to the right, so that basically I'm changing direction by mirroring the design. Or I could change the direction by turning the page either any of these points. Yeah, I can go to any of these points. And so I can do it like a mirror, or I can do it as a rotation. Now, the mirror is very simple when I have a photo like this, because look, this picture, everybody's facing that way. This picture, he's facing this way. So that's a very easy change, but I can also have a look and see, would it make sense for me to do something like this? That might get a little bit more complicated with getting all of the things legible, because I used a lot of words in this design, and that means they're all in the vertical. Will it still look the same if I change all of these to the horizontal? It might work. Well, it would work at some point in time, but it might make the page more difficult to create than I need to make it. Or I could go completely upside down, so now all my wording is in the right direction. And I can look at something like this, which is giving me the same thing on where he's pointing and where the words are, but it's giving me my top to the bottom balance is different, yeah? So I used this bigger box on this page to have the bigger element at the bottom and to make that feel grounded. Now, you can certainly put the bigger item at the top. It's not a problem. But one of the things when I turn it around that I realize that the reason I like this design is that this heavier block is at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is mirror it. So number 1 thing, change the color. Number 2 thing, change a direction. So I'm going to be mirroring and having his photo toward the left, and my wording is going to be toward the right compared to the page that I'm looking at. But I need to cut some other layers before I can start working on that photo. I need something that's going to represent this green paper that gives me my big contrast. So in my case, that's going to be the red. And it's going to be this red dot, because here I've got that check pattern, and then I've got something that's still quite a small simple pattern to look at. So in this case, it's a hand-drawn wood grain. It might just look like wobbly lines once I've put stuff over the top, but it was meant to be a wood grain. And if I put something here, like say I put a really colorful pattern that had, 10 different colors and it was a big floral or something with big motifs like my feather paper or something like that, once I start piling all these extra pieces on top, it's going to get so busy so quickly. So I want something that is high contrast like this green against the fuchsia, but I don't want the pattern to be overwhelming. I want to keep it simple. So you can't get a lot more contrast of red versus black and white. And the pattern here is really simple. By the way, this is a really old paper from Love Elsie for KI Memories, which was 2007. So this paper has been in my stash for 10 years. Time to use it or lose it, I think. I'm going to use my completely scientific method of measuring here and just mark what it was on this page. So there's my width. And there's my height. And this little detail, well, you can't see those two sides there, but it was straight corners on one end and rounded corners on the other end. So I'm going to try to replicate that too. Corner rounder coming out to play just on two sides of each piece. That one's going to go at the bottom, smaller one going up at the top. And another detail from the other page is that I inked everything. Just going to smooth that out. And I inked everything on the other one with brown ink because, of course, I had brown around the edges. So this time I have gray around the edges, so I'm going to ink with gray. Let's just try that corner one more time. That's better. And gray ink. Then one thing that I always really like about this page is that I did something that I don't tend to do very often, and that is that I moved these boxes into the page before I attach them. So what I tend to do lately, and I think I've probably done this for a long time, is that I have a tendency to do this and move pieces so they go all the way to the outside of the background rather than keeping this frame all the way around. And in this case, I did the opposite. Now, when I made this page, I was really inspired by Jamie Warren, who at the time, we were both scrapbooking in the garden for 2 Peas in a Bucket. And every time she would post a layout, I would just think, oh, I would never think to put stuff on the page in the same places that she does. And this is one of those things where she would put things inside the edge where I would go outside the edge. And I haven't done it for a while, so I'm going to try it today and see if I still love it. There we go. One there. And then just to quickly make sure this is lined up. Yeah, I'm just checking. It is lined up on the original, right? Yes, it is. So, there. So that's just making, you could use a ruler, but I have this here. I don't have to open the drawer to get my ruler. You can save time. Now, I need more layers behind that photo to get some contrast going there as well. Now in this case, I had the black frame and then I had 2 different layers here. One that was a paper that would match my embellishments, a grid, and then one that was really multicolored to bring all the colors of that color scheme in. That's also a paper that I used in the embellishments and I cut into smaller pieces. And the turquoise from that particular paper comes from the photo here where it's in our uniforms. So I would really like to do that here. I'd like to bring in something that has a blue to match his shirt, so that I bring in that with everything else. Now, here's the trick. Can I find a paper in my stash that's going to have red and maybe black and white and this blue? It might mean that I need to look for something like a 4th of July paper to get a red, white, and blue and then hope that it has some black detail lines. That's a possibility, so I'll have a look and see what I can find. At first glance, I realized that these blue cameras, which I've used once already, are a pretty good match to the blue. These 3 papers are all from Amy Tangerine's On a Whim, which is her most recent collection. And I realized that there was a black and white grid in that same collection, which is a mimic of the same thing that's here. There's a grid there. So that's an idea. And there's also this pattern that doesn't have white, but it does have black with blue and red. Now it has some other colors too, so I'm not 100% on this, but I think it might be useful. So I've pulled that out. And then I also had this one that I'd already brought into my kit, which has black and white and red, and it has two blues, but neither of them are the blue that he's wearing. So there's a lighter blue and a darker blue. But when this would be cut into a mat, you're not going to see a huge amount of the pattern because I would just be cutting a little frame around the edge. So I do think there's some possibility here of moving around until I find just the right one, and I could put that in the mat. So there's definitely some options. I'm going to start with this black and white grid because I know that's going to work in a very similar way as the original worked. The original layout here. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that in there and cut a mat. So now let's have a look at these three candidates for a mat behind there. I've got the blue cameras, which if I'm using them cut out as embellishments later on, I'm not worried about you being able to tell whether they're cameras or in a small frame, because when you see the big piece there, you'll somewhere in the back of your mind it will link up that this is the same color as the camera that's cut out, so that's not a problem. But what is a problem to me is that there's not a lot of contrast between this white and black and all of the busyness here. So that might still be the same problem if I use something like this. Now, I would move this around until I find the best match, but I'm not going to be able to bring in the right blue. And I get some contrast. It's not great. Let's try that black confetti print. And that's definitely going to give me more contrast. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this one. I'm going to try to move it to a place where I can get plenty of blue around my edge. And I think what I might do is that if I get further into the layout and find that some of the other colors are distracting me, like the little pink dots or maybe the green is not going to go, then I might come in with smaller embellishments and cover it up. Because I could always just put a red enamel dot over a pink circle, and then I could customize the paper to be exactly what I needed. Now, remember, I'm changing direction by mirroring this page, so I want my mat to be over here instead of over to the right. And I know I have some layers to go behind here, so I'm just going to tack this down lightly because I'm going to need to be able to put something under there. And I've made this mat a little bit bigger than what's there because I wanted to be able to get the blue into the picture. But I do want to go ahead and use a very similar treatment here at the top, so I'm going to pick out a washi tape straight away, and then let's talk about these hearts that are on the page. So, sorry if that was out of shot, here's the washi tape above the photo, and then I've got hearts and brads here. Now, here's my third thing that I'm going to change. I've changed color, I've changed direction, and I'm going to change motif. And what I mean by that is I'm going to choose one thing. Obviously it wasn't the pattern in the background here. I'm going to choose one thing and purposely change it to another. So instead of hearts, I'm going to have something else. Now I could go ahead and replace the hearts with cameras, or it's a Mickey themed party, so I could change the hearts to Mickey heads. That's also an option. But for right now, I'm going to try to find the other elements here that are a bit more basic. So I need a coordinating tape, or maybe even two. And something that's going to be quite neutral to go behind the photo and kind of bridge all this together. Why don't I use the red for my washi tape, and instead of doing some sort of cream-based neutral for this here, why don't I go ahead and bring in that gray? So I've chosen a gray pattern, and part of that thought was that I've got one spot paper, two spot papers. You know I love threes, so why don't I go ahead and add in some gray spots as well. Going to put the washi here at the top of the photo. Just looking at about how big it is, and I don't want it to touch his face. I want it to run right across all those papers. And let me measure up how big this was. Just about there. so that everything can stay pretty much the same. It's making it really easy for this to come together quickly, but it's still going to look pretty different when I'm finished. That's my intention anyway. So gray ink on the edges, just like all the other papers. And then I'm going to tuck this one under the photo, but remember I'm going the other direction. I'm mirroring before, so it was over there, now it's going to go over here. And it ends before the end of the red. I think in this case I'm going to bring it down just a little bit lower there. Okay. So I'm going to have some room down here for lettering, but also a big embellishment here like this tag. And there's a tag up here too, so I need to think about how I want that bit at the top. Now because I've made this bigger, I have less room at the top than I had on that original page. So I need to find something I could put across there. I do want to use my cameras, and I've come up with a way that I think I can make the Mickeys be part of the embellishment too, but they're going to be really small, and the cameras are going to be my bigger motif that's going to replace the hearts. In a few places they might actually be too big, but I can adapt that as I go along. I started looking through tags and die cuts, and I started originally looking for something that was very similar to this, but maybe white, and everything I had that was a white tag in my stash that looked similar to this, just like a plain luggage tag, it was either too big or way too small, and nothing that was just kind of a nice medium. So I then started looking at die cuts, and I've come up with a different little option, and that said I'm going to replace this one with this tag and this one down here with this one. But they have the days of the week on them, which is not what I need. Oh, and I'm mirroring, so I don't want that over here. Right, I need to remember, I'm mirroring. Okay, I'm going to leave that one for now. Now, I've put the gray ink around them, and I think this one is a good match for size now that I've made the photo mat a little bit bigger, and I need something a bit smaller. Now, in the original design, this is coming off that edge there, and I'm thinking that maybe it's better just inside there. Keep it a little bit more contained. And then what I'm going to do is just find something that will cover up where it says Monday with a different word, and I'm just looking here to keep my spacing pretty similar to where it is on the other page. And I have some different stickers pulled out here. There might be something that would work. Here we go. These two are both birthday themed. What about, no, that's going to be really big across there, so I think I would be better off with something small, but I still want it to cover up the Monday, so what about this one that says Joy? Is that the right size? Hey, that's not bad. I go for that one. Then I'm going to go ahead and carry on working on this block just to get these other little details. So I need something like a border sticker that's going to run over here, and nothing that I've pulled out thus far is a border sticker. I just saw that and thought it might work as a border. There are some borders there, but they don't really work. What about that piece though? I like that it has white and stars and red. I think that might work well. It's a lot smaller than what's there. So what I was thinking was that I could cut this and then have two little pieces, because I do have that border in another spot on the original layout. And then I'll have one, if I don't get it stuck to the desk, there we go. I'll have one waiting for me to go on this side of the page over here. And then I've got buttons. I need to find some buttons that are going to coordinate with this page. And yet again, that's something that I haven't been using recently. So that's why choosing a layout that's older can really help me to get out of whatever repetition I'm using at the moment. I haven't been reaching for buttons at all. So now I need to see if I can find some that will match. What am I saying that I don't use buttons anymore? You would not believe the process I just went through of going through a drawer of all sorts of things that I have kept, having set free a whole bunch of supplies over the years between this, and most of my button stash disappearing, button stash in this traditional sense, when I found a few buttons that would maybe work but weren't great, and then all of a sudden went, wait, I do use buttons. It's just that they look a little different. I tend to use this kind of button. So that's what I'm going to try. Let's see. Now, admittedly, this page is going to use more of them than I would tend to use on a layout. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But I can make that work. How many have I got that are blue? 1, 2, 3, 4. Black and white, 5. Gray, 6. And I've introduced yellow here. So, yeah. I can make 7. It'll work. Okay, so let's figure out placement here. I'm just going to look at the ones that are at the top, and I need to remember that I'm mirroring. So my biggest one is going to go toward this edge. And then a smaller one coming toward there. I'm going to use the yellow so that I have some contrast. And in the original it was in the open space, but I'm getting really close here, so I'm going to overlap on purpose rather than end up with that tiny little frame of white there. I'm going to go ahead and overlap that. One right up here at the top and one down there. So, smaller one at the top. Larger one. I was going to go with the black and white, but it's quite a lot of black, so it feels really heavy to me. So I'm going to put it in the buttons at the bottom of the page and go with the lighter one up here. So, do I want gray? Do I want the light blue? I'm going to go with light blue. And I want this one up a little bit higher so that this one feels, whoops. I just didn't want that to feel like they were meant to be lined up, but I missed it a little bit. I wanted it to be definite that they were not meant to be lined up. Okay, there's that. Now, how's this going to work down here? Where this should really, if I'm mirroring, come over to this side. And then my title is going to run from that. So I think what I will do is I'm going to have it overlap the photo only just the teeniest little amount, but I want to have the gray show on that side rather than have it kind of end up like that. I'm going to move it in. And again, I need to find something that's going to cover the word Sunday there. This one that says Happy Day is going to be a little bit bigger than what's here, but I think it's going to be the best match in terms of both color and theme, so I'm just going to purposely run it well down the page there. And then I'm going to stop and correct myself. I'm going to change my mind. Because look what I did here. The embellishment on this block was horizontal. And so I could place that this direction. And again, I'm looking at that gray because I want this to be in a purposeful spot so it doesn't just look awkward there. And then I will put another small embellishment here. Why don't I go ahead and find what I want to bring in there? I said I wanted to bring in Mickeys. I'm going to do it with enamel dots. So, what color will they be? What color have I got that can work? But I thought if I had little groupings of 3 enamel dots, I can use one that's slightly bigger for the face and 2 that are slightly smaller for the ears. So let's have that bright blue, so I finally have a blue that's exactly like his shirt. The big one, well, I better bring it over so that the ear is going to come into the right place and help me cover up that word. Let's see if this will work. I'm going to be able to cover it like that. Does that look like a Mickey? That's a Mickey, right? That's a Mickey. And it's covered up my word. Yeah, okay, that's what I'm going to go with. Now, I did want to bring in that washi tape and have it repeat like it does here because I want it to frame the photo. So in this case, I'm going to run the washi tape underneath all of that. Whoops. So just going to get a piece that will work. Pop that back over there. And risk everything here while I pull all this up. Hopefully it won't all fall to pieces. Nope. Okay, brilliant. There we go. So, a little bit of repetition there to there. Okay. I'm going to want a Mickey up here too, but with a bit of paper or something. And this has worked out well because this one does not have journaling because this is a title page to an album. I want this one to have a little bit of room for journaling, and now I've got that potential. I've also got room for my title, and then I'm going to run that embellishment, this way. One at the top, one at the bottom. Next thing I want to do before I get into the title and everything that's going to be small details down here is to do these little pieces at the side. I'm not using the Viewmasters this time, but I do still want to use something that's circular. And I'd brought in the yellow here and then here. So why don't I go ahead and bring in more of that? So I've punched some yellow circles, and I'm just going to see about how much I want to include there. Because I'm not going all the way off the edge of the page, I don't get that easy cheat where I turn over the page and cut it. I need to cut it with a really straight line. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the trimmer, which with small pieces I don't tend to do. I tend to just cut them as they are with my scissors because I tend to do them in places that are more forgiving than that. But this is not one of those. Oh, and I just went on autopilot and put normal adhesive on there, but in this case that's the item on the page that has some pop dots, so I'm going to pick that up just like it is on the original so that things aren't getting too flat, and also because it'll give it some balance with the fact that the buttons are really raised up. So sometimes if you have one element that's really, really tall, then the rest looks extra flat. So that can be a little bit useful. Now, this is going to mimic that one. This is from that big colorful grid that I didn't end up using on the photo mat, but I still liked these colors. So I want that to be pretty close to the photo mat, so that's going to cut right in red. Gray on those edges. It ended up looking very French there. That's alright. And that one is going to be flat. And then the yellow is going to go on top of that. And then my polka dot is going to repeat below that. And it's going to be a lot more obvious that it's repeating this time than on the original because I used just a tiny bit of that pattern here, where on this page I made it bigger so that I could get all that blue into the color scheme. So I may want to make the dotted piece smaller this time so that it doesn't all feel too heavy. Let's see how it looks. Just lining this all up. Yellow's going to go up there. Now, actually I think that will be okay, but I will go ahead and cut it with the trimmers so that I don't make a wonky cut. Well, I will try not to make a wonky cut. And this can go along that edge as well. And then I had a phrase underneath that. So why don't I go back to that birthday sticker sheet and see if there's a phrase that would work here. And I could pick that one up with pop dots just like the original. But one thing that's interesting if you try this process, and it will be very different depending on what your stash is like and how much your style has changed over the years. But what I'm finding with this page is that the reason that my pages don't look like this right now is that I'm having to move all over my room to find the things that I used on this page. Like I don't have, until I rethought the idea of buttons, I didn't have just plain buttons anywhere near where I would pick up my supplies, where I know you're only seeing my hands, but most of the supplies I use on most of my layouts are all within my reach while I'm standing here. I don't have to move around. But that wasn't working. So to find the things that I used to use, I'm having to move around. So that tells me that part of why I can get into a little repeat loop comes from where I have stuff and how I have a tendency to use just what I can reach really easily. That might apply to you or it might not, but I'm just going to throw it out there in case it's useful information. Okay, time for me to repeat that process down on the bottom edge over there, but it's going to be pretty much the exact same thing, so we'll skip ahead. Remember, I chose to change my heart motif to cameras, so I have some cameras that I'm going to put into these little clusters instead of having hearts. So just looking at where they might best go, and I'm going to pop them on top of the yellow circles. And now I'm ready to work on my title. I haven't pre-planned what letter stickers I'm going to use here, so I've got to stop again to find stuff, and that's more stopping and starting than I tend to do with a layout, but I'm saving time on moving things around because I'm not exploring any options of where things can move around. So I suppose the time saved and the time used is a little bit swings and roundabouts, and it all comes out even at the end. I'm excited that I have the right letters to spell one small word from one of my favorite thickers ever, just because I love this blue glitter. It's really pretty, and it's a good match there. So I'm going to do the first word in this red Simple Stories alphabet, and it's going to be a mix of upper and lower because that's what I've got, I think, and I'm okay with that. But obviously, if you don't like mixed ones, then I would hold out and find another alphabet that would work for you. I thought about bringing in yellow, but I really like at the moment how the yellow has this triangle going on, and so I'm not going to bring in yellow for the title. I'm going to keep it in the red and the blue. And I'm keeping the title really simple. I'm not going to win any awards for originality with this title, but I'm ridiculously happy that I had enough to spell boy. There we go. And actually, almost immediately as I said that, I decided I wanted this in a different place. I'm going to take everything here in the red, if I can, and shift it all so that it's framed by the B here, rather than going across that bottom of the black paper. Both work, but I just didn't end up loving the amount of space that then existed between the top of these letters and the bottom of those. Time to repeat my buttons, and I'm mirroring this, so I'm going to put the biggest one over on this side. Oh, maybe I won't because that's starting to look like boyo. Let me take that further away from the title. Okay. So I'm going to have here, here, and here. Why don't I do it right about there? And the smallest one in the middle down here at the bottom. And then a medium-sized one, and I think I'll go with the, do I want to go with the yellow? No, I'm going to go with the gray. It has a little bit of blue in it too. There we go, just to make a little triangle there. That's all the buttons. Now, what else is on this page? I do need to fill in my journaling. I'm not going to use one of these pins with the flag, and I could But I will tell you that I stopped using pin embellishments a while back for two reasons. One, I found that in a few cases they were poking holes in the page protector and I wasn't happy with that. And the other thing is not this particular brand, but a couple of them in my stash rusted on the pages. And that is just heartbreak to a scrapbooker, isn't it? When you go back to your old pages and something has kind of disintegrated already and you are hoping for it to last a long time. So I'm just going to leave that off and have what I've got there. Not a problem. And I have this little embellishment here next to the photo there. I'm not sure if I want anything there or not. Let's have a look here. I could put another camera there, but I don't think that that's particularly a pleasing arrangement of the cameras. I quite like this little red with the present. So why don't I tuck that one there and just keep that really, really simple. And then up here, oh, so this one had a heart where I would have replaced that with a camera, but that's going to be really big for there. So if I am going to use a camera, I think it needs to be smaller. But why don't I also look at something else that I had pulled out that maybe I could use as the same color scheme, but smaller. I pulled out these really old Heidi Grace chipboard pieces, 2008, so they're almost as old as the red polka dot paper. And I was thinking maybe one of them would be a good match, but now that I look at it, nothing's jumping out to me, although this is quite tempting. Hold on. Let's bring the gray polka dot in, but in the reverse. So now this feels very much like it's part of the page because the pattern is there twice, once in negative. And then I had a brad up there. What do I have that could be a little smaller? Let's see. What about those birthday stickers? Got a little circle with a red star. Or wait, why don't I just go ahead and put one of the Mickey heads there? I was thinking not to, because I was going to follow the placement of these enamel dots to put my Mickey heads, but why? I think that's a good place to put the next one. And so I'll go ahead and do that. Let's have him closer to the photo here. Whoop, they're sticking to me. So I'll have one there and one there. And then I could follow the placement of these enamel dots with the other color. So I can come up here, and then I need, let's see. There's actually just one down here at the bottom underneath the title. So maybe I will turn that into the other spot where I'm going to put a Mickey head, because I'd like to have 3. So maybe I put one down here, but he's going to be slightly, no he's not, he's going to be the same color. I thought I didn't have enough. Is it too close? No, I think that'll be alright. And then just one more light colored one, I think. Oh, his ears are not even, oh no. There we go. Right about there to mimic what I had on the original page. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out where all of those spots translate to. And then, aside from filling in the journaling, the only thing that's left here is I had these little spots that were kind of arrows in. So here's that last finishing step. I'm going to take this striped paper. Oh, whoops. Let's see, maybe I'll move it down here a little bit further. And the polka dot, just in really small pieces, to have the 2 little arrows in that space. And that's where I'm going to finish it. So you can judge if you think it looks too much or too much like this original that I made many years ago to qualify as a different look, but I know that it's very different to anything that I've been creating lately, and yet I still really like it because it's supplies that I'm really enjoying and colors that I'm liking to work with right now. So I'm really happy to have a page like this in my album, and it gets me out of a funk where I might like the pages I'm making, but they might all start looking the same. So if I find something that looks different and then change it a little bit, those three things always help me to change the color, the direction, and one of the motifs. I hope that you find that enjoyable, and by the way, if you are watching this on National Scrapbook Day, please join us at Scrapbook Like a Superhero and on Shimelle.com, as there's plenty of NSD inspiration and we would love for you to take part. In particular, we're having what I'm calling a design along, where together we're putting together a product that will be finished by the end of Saturday night, and I'd love to have your input into that product. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you soon.